Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the newest edition of our Life West Leadership Line. I'm Dr. Ron Oberstein, president of Life West, and I am so thrilled to have our guest on today. You can see him on the screen. If you don't know who Dr. Donny Epstein is, then you will certainly know who he is afterwards, after we have this conversation. Donny, you need no introduction. I'm going to give a brief one, but welcome to the Life West Leadership Line.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Ron.
You're totally welcome. Just for those of you who don't know the history of Donny, and we're going to be Don and Ron, or Donny and Ronnie, because we're the Donny and Ronnie show today. Donny graduated in 1977. He enrolled in the Columbia Institute of Chiropractic, but when he graduated, his diploma said the New York College of Chiropractic. Interesting transition as you went through. He learned under Tom Whitehorn. If you don't know about Tom, he was a brilliant upper cervical practitioner. He learned under Reggie Gold. These are the people that he was around back in the 70s. He graduated in 77, as I said. 78 to 92, he had practiced in New York, had two practices, one on Long Island and one in Brooklyn, seeing up to 900 to 1,100 visits per week at the height of that time. And then in 83, 84, he started Network Chiropractic, and we'll go through the evolution of that, right? And then he got into research in 94. If you don't know about the work that Donny did with UC Irvine, I believe it was, right? One of the first research projects that came out, just doing phenomenal stuff. And Donny, you've got so much to share in this short period of time, so we'll just jump into it. Give us that evolution, like what took place. Like, obviously you came out of school, out of New York, and you were practicing a certain way, and it evolved. Share with us, how that took place.
Well, it's always easy to see it years later how it took place. And there are pieces that at the time I didn't realize that were going to be important. I think the basic thing that really triggered everything, and everything was consistent with that, the form changes, the principle is the same. And as more academic understanding in quantum physics and the nervous system and consciousness systems theories came out, it helped me realize how whatever I learned originally in chiropractic and BD&BJ was so ahead of its time, but didn't have a culture for it.
Yeah.
The thing that is the center of everything, and I call it epienergetics, which is epi is around all information, or around all energy is a field of information. Information observes itself as consciousness, to be self-aware. And that got me from the very beginning that it's a vibrational wisdom communicating the whole universe of all the wisdom could be had with now called zero-point field. And that somehow is translated to the nervous system by the tension and tone of the neuroskeleton of D.D. Palmer. And as you stretch the neuroskeleton, you alter the vibration of the nerve and therefore the morphology produced by the nerve in all forms of life. And the chiropractic's objective was to help through a specific adjustment, force application, to allow that self-organizing system to observe itself in some way, to reorganize and normalize the tone between the individual and the world, which is always progressive, according to D. Palmer, and all the planes of existence are affected. That principle guided everything.
Yeah.
And hunger. The other element of it.
Before you go into the other element, I just want to kind of throw in something, because I need to acknowledge something, Donny. When you started this work, people were looking at this like, what? The chiropractors were looking at this like, what the heck is that? Like it wasn't within their realm of the normal work that we were doing, the chiropractic profession were doing at the time, right? Almost like when Lipton came out and started talking about epigenetics and stuff, and people were like, what are you talking about?
Bruce and I co-evolved the ideas, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I just want to thank you. And I think our listeners should know, it would have been so easy back in the 80s for you to say, well, man, it's just not being accepted. And I'm just going to, go back to doing my upper cervical and Pierce Stillwagon, the things that you were, where you started off with. And you just but you saw the truth. I mean, you not only think you saw it, you felt it, energetically, you knew it. Now we're talking about the field. Now we're talking about all the stuff that you were talking about 30 years ago, right?
I remember that was before Deepak Chopra came out, before consciousness was popular, before those things. And I knew it. I mean, from the time I was a child, my normal seeing, and seems weird, is I didn't recognize things by the form of people. My normal seeing was in that space before something became a thought. I was put in heavy drugs with visual, auditory, kinesthetic hallucinations with grand mal and petit mal seizures. My normal seeing, what I now know, is in that zone, perhaps before a mental impulse gets interpreted, in that place. And it was crazy. So this was home to me. And when I got into practice at the time, the basic idea then was just liberate life as when you went to school. The thing that got me so powerfully was Reggie Gold's PhD thesis on the China life. Mm-hmm. And epienergetics, what I now call a term epienergetics, is the relation of energy and information to produce form. That is the basis of it. And that there's intelligence, which self-organizes, or self-aware is called consciousness, force and matter. And Reggie said force is also energy equals MC squared. Energy and matter are the same as a function of speed of light, which now we know beyond the speed of light. Yeah. Okay. That was the basis of everything. So I wanted to take a look and say, when I'm taking care of somebody, if innate is innate and is intelligent, I shouldn't have to convince a person to intelligence. And is the force application a force application or is it an adjustment? And if so, this person's life would be changing. Chiropractic for a better world tomorrow. How do you know it's really working? Yeah. I said, what if 90% of the results come from 10% of what's true? What if I had 95% of what's true? Yeah. So I was looking for, when D.D. Palmer talked about the neuroskeleton being stretched, I was saying, well, what mechanical spinal cord tension patterns would develop? And I started my simple early seminars were just about the principle that B.J. Palmer in 1920 said, stop going after single effect nerve pressure at the IVF. And the osteological laboratory showed that spines can be stored but not necessarily subluxated. And a misalignment subluxation were the same thing. He said, look at multiple cord tensions, which also the etiology section of Stevenson's textbook, 1927, 46, and looked at that. I then realized that Alf Brigg, who developed a neurosurgeon, looked at mechanical tension of the central nervous system and said when you stretch the spinal cord, it alters the sensory motor and autonomic functions of it. It changes the brain function. And I looked at the pictures he drew, and it's almost identical to what Stevenson's textbook BJ talked about those times. Yeah. So I wanted to identify those mechanical tension patterns that would alter brain cells, a big bang, men and women get together, big bang, one cell's produced. You know, it divides, get the module, get the perimeter streak, and neural tube somehow connects this primary field of unlimited consciousness, the universal intelligence that coordinates everything. And then it is that vibrational sense is interpreted into communication, becomes a mental impulse, but the primary communication was not a nerve impulse. That's almost an artifact of it. It was the mental impulse. And I wanted to make sure that stayed in chiropractic, and I understood what that was. And BJ said that eventually, if we took the hautometer and we took the neuroencephalomintipograph and we took the neurocalligraph and all the oscillatory wave patterns of the body and put in the graph, we would have the nerve force carrier wave. Yeah. If this wave would go through the system and somehow innate and educated would become when the world would be different. Yeah. My commitment was to find what that is and to create it. What if there was an innate signal that aligned each person, not only with their health and life, but the way they organize the morphology of their life? Because when that mental impulse is expressed, it changes the form the cells have. Pathology is a path of logic. If you have less energy available in the system, it's bound up, there's less bandwidth, less information, so therefore the cell changes its form. And I realized subluxation is life in modified form in all aspects of life. So my first seminar was, before you go after the individual segments, if the spinal cord is not resting effectively or altered, the message is between the brain and the body. I believe it was more afferent than efferent. Sorry, BJ. And going to that message there. And I felt that, and I could take a look at this. So I wanted to find out, when I take care of someone, are they thinking a bit different? Is the conversation different?
Yeah.
Are their actions different? What's the behavior of the spine looked at? And I realized that everything is a relationship between perception, a sense or a feeling, behavior, and structure or form. And some people, they will get great changes, great instrumentation changes, but the structure will look the same because they don't do structure first. And other people will get a movement that happens great, the life moved, but they wouldn't be aware of it. Why are you still coming in? I saw God.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand those mysteries. So that's what happened. And as I started discovering the different tension patterns, and I used neurocalligraph, early dermal thermograph reading. I had some use of Tops's lens in my office. I did therapy localization. I looked at x-rays. They said, where do they all agree? All techniques work sometimes, but to say they all work all the time, that wasn't enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking and taking a look and listening to people. I remember I was doing more pattern work up a cervical in practice, and a guy said to me, hey, doc, you taught me the intelligence. You didn't even feel my spine. You used x-ray and instrumentation. You don't trust it. You don't innate. That's what do you mean? Feel my spine. And I felt it. I said, well, you're early before network developed. You're not in pattern, so great. Come back another 2 weeks later. I was proud of how little I could take care of him rather than how much I could serve him. Because there's still a medical model. Correct something, restore them to where they were before. I don't want to restore them before. What they were before is the challenge.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, because you brought up about consciousness, right? And you brought up about, obviously, we know that the goal of chiropractic isn't to eliminate symptoms. We know that. We know that we can go back to the basic premise, but how you looked at the spine and how you looked at the integration between the person, like the whole person, right? The psycho, the psychomotor, and whatever you want to call it. And it reminds me of this guy. I don't know if you ever read Karl Prabram.
Yes.
He wrote a book called The Holographic Theory of the Brain, right? And he talked about how, he was a psychoneuroimmunologist.
That was one of the things that I looked at in looking at models. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you look at those models, he says, well, if the brain is just a hologram, right? A hologram, what's it a hologram of? And that's where consciousness comes into the whole play, right? And all you wanted to, and what I got from you, was it's just about being the receptor, right? To be able to be the receptor, be one with, right? It's about having a clear functioning antenna, so to speak, if I can just use that word, right?
And the element necessary, this is key, is two things. One is there's a linear system, which means you change the initial conditions a little bit to get a different change in outcome. You have a ZIT, you don't need chemotherapy, therapy. Herbal chiropractic is enough. You have a big disease, you need something that can kill somebody there. And every sport player knows that. You make a slight modification in the way you throw that ball, the way you hit it, you get a non-proportional outcome. Living systems are nonlinear systems, not living systems.
Yeah.
That's principle number one. Now, with this, what I wanted to find out is how does the person evolve? How do they change? Because you see it. The most exciting thing chiropractors have is, my God, this person made a change in life. This is what happened. In my development of helping the body self-regulate spinal cord tension, I realized that each tension pattern has certain consciousness associated with it. This was not research, it was anecdotal, and people started seeing it all around the world. I said, well, the shape, position, tone, and tension of the spine is in relationship to shape, position, tone, and tension of a person's life.
Yeah.
I studied that. I was an art history major first. And I noticed if a person was like this, they have one set of emotions, like this, there. I then laid, what if the heart was angry? And what if the gallbladder was, as said, what would those postural regional things look like? Yeah. Thermographically would show up in those things. And I started realizing I could recognize that. Then along the spine, I started finding there that if there was a lack of recovery from an emotional factor, the spine was affected differently than a chemical. It showed different patterns. And I would put the nerve chart over it and could start predicting a chemical or emotional retracing of those things. I wanted to know the person.
Yeah.
But then in 1986, a wave developed. I took care of people and the body started making waves. I had no idea what the heck it was. It was my last seminar ever because looking weird on public speaking were my two greatest fears. Okay. And at that time, a wave went through people. Somehow when enough tension came out of the spinal cord, some energy that was bound up was liberated. People moved, took yoga posture, never had yoga. I didn't know what yoga was at the time. People said, oh, it's Kundalini. I would have thought Kunda was pasta, Lini's little pastas. I didn't know. I had no idea about. And they started having the waves. They would experience different spiritual states. And this was far into my culture, but I did know that there's an innate potential for someone, and somehow some force was being liberated I had no idea about, went to the spiritual realm, and when B.J. Palmer went around the world looking for the philosophies of different meditative practices, different spiritual things, realizing that was part of the picture also. Didn't know what to do with it. And it took me in a path of studying different things, brought different people to me. The wave got lots of attention. I didn't know what the heck it was. I was not going to teach anymore because this was really weird, but people loved it.
Yeah.
And people talked about it and the life changed. And sometimes they got more unsubluxated. Sometimes they were more subluxated. So I said, I don't know about this anymore. And I continued. And we got involved in research. And as New York Times, LA Times, Lancet Constitution, even Journal of Veterinary Medicine articles on changing consciousness and behavior of animals that did these things, all over the state, all the state boards started attacking 28 jurisdictions, never a patient complaint, because articles are talking about spiritual, local, psychological change in people and the professionals trying to get insurance coverage for back pain. And some of the political stuff with that was the fact that I was in the more immature masculine at the time, the masculine. Yeah, I'm going to fuck you, tell you this, the emperor has no clothes, rather than a more mature way of saying, there's another way, people. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong exclusively, but everything is right at the right time or wrong at the wrong time.
Right, right.
So we did that, and Jerry Clum was really helpful for me. Jerry Clum said, Donny, my suggestion from politically at that time is say your system is a means of helping the body to regulate and correct subluxations at a very high level, and that everything else is healing. No board, no school teaches healing. You teach methods of inducing it, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I moved all that into healing, 12 stages of healing, which involve consciousness shifts, because unless there's a change in meaning, there's no healing. And a change in meaning doesn't come from you giving a meaning. It comes from educated mind being lit up by innate. And this is a major factor. Everyone listen to this. Every thought, every action, every symptom, every disease, every manifestation of the body, and in your business, your relationship, is a function of how much energy is available. Goes back to trying to life. Less energy, less bandwidth information, a lower level thought, action, story, conversation, manifestation. More energy that's coherent, that's important, coherent. A higher level of information, conscious expressed, educated mind is able to receive more innate, more effectively, the system organized in a higher level. So the question is, are you looking to correct something or restore them to it before? Or do you want to help a lifetime of progression? Because in today's world, And I realized years ago, there's going to be a real change in the world, where a shift in consciousness from binding energy and believing the physical world is primary reality to unbound energy of the innate potential that prevails for people, where suddenly magic happens. Magic happens, coherence. Coherence. When two neural centers oscillate at the same frequency, an electromagnetic field happens between them that is actually the hottest area of consciousness. So what I wanted to do in network and said, if consciousness is associated with entrained or linked neural centers oscillating, carrying more bandwidth or information, then I want to make sure I'm developing spinal oscillators that, if linked together, would link the central nervous system into the promise of chiropractic. And that has been the journey.
Yeah, and what you just described, when you really go, if we could boil it down, to a level of understanding for everybody, because Donny, you are like, poof, man, you're just dropping wisdom all over the place. It's what Anatofsky said was salutogenesis, right? It's the creation of health, and it's all about coherence. And the exact words, exact thing is no different. And it's so crazy that we can't get on a page, in our quest for healing and our quest for teaching healing, that this is all about having the body function to the highest level it can. And we don't know what that is. It's just about.
And we've been studying that now. 14 universities have studied the wave and network. Mm-hmm. This is important because it's not, it stranges me. I'm not a technique guy. Okay. I'm a principle guy. Technique is like a ceremony. Whitehead said ceremony is preparation for change. Okay. Yeah. It's a tool for it. I hope that in the chiropractic profession, healing, and all disciplines, the ideas I presented and the tools I've developed will be a basis for a new renaissance. Now, with this, it goes back to the principle of universal force destructive, which is entropy, and innate force so constructive, which is syntropy minus entropy. This is the center of everything that we talk about. And that what there really is a relationship between the unique forces of the individual and the unique forces of the environment. Mm-hmm. What we're expecting is that we want to delay the breakdown. We don't have enough energy to organize the wisdom of life. And that's our lifespan, how often we could do that. But I say something different. If we have a greater innate expression, which is associated with a certain level of neural coherence, will show up spinally in a certain way, and other measurements also, and the life is coherence there, then what will happen is we could exert a greater impact on our environment than it creates upon us.
Yes. And that leads us.
That's the tipping point.
Yeah. But Donny, that leads us into the impact that chiropractic has in the social science arena. Right.
And I believe it really belonged there first, but it wasn't developed. The purpose of chiropractic is to improve people's choices, their life expression, the participation in life, the collaboration, all the things people are talking about now in business and other aspects. And what they're missing, chiropractors have learned my methods, and I went from network chiropractic. Then when I did the first research, the largest study I think ever done and still done in chiropractic and health is what outcomes do people have physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, life choices, etc. We did that. And when I realized that when this wave went through somebody, if they were not aware of it, which seemed crazy, if they were not aware of it, their quality of life didn't improve. And I said, why? I said, oh my God, the system is in stress. Frontal lobe can't receive higher signals. It can't organize to a higher level. It's in survival mechanism there. If they become aware of it, then it goes to the higher cortex. They can evolve to a new level, make healthier choices, impact people, others. So I put awareness in the center, the person's awareness of their spine, the change it's making, a different conversation. And I took what the average patient was getting, what the average doctor was getting with the average patient, not me in the study, and said at 2 months we'll ask these questions. Then it'll be stress adaptation, the life choice, spiritual type changes. They couldn't call it spiritual study because it wouldn't get published. They called it life enjoyment, which is ultimately, if you're on a spiritual journey, if it's all, it's not, there's no journey in spirituality, just now.
Yeah.
So we started looking, and everything was based upon that, everything energy efficiency. So we started now studying what change is really going on. I want to know it. And it was published in all different papers and first Journal of Variable Subsystem Research, and then years later, the Journal of Alternative Complementary Medicine. But the key thing, I said, I'm going to start doing research that understands the mathematics of innate intelligence. What is the mathematics of how the system self-organizes? And I'm going to create those help create strategies never happened before. I go into the codes of creation, whatever it goes, and I find a way of helping shift it. That's my gig. Other people's gig is to live it. Okay, there.
Yeah.
So what we did is I started doing research up and down the spine, surface EMG of the spinal wave. There has to be something going on. I met with 14 different disciplines, University of California, Irvine, and I said, I don't know how this works. They said, but it's reproducible, consistent, predictable, that makes it scientific. We have to find out how to explain it. I said, we know it works in theory. In practice, will it work in theory? So now they studied the wave. They found when this wave moved through the person, that it is a unique signal. Each person's wave is unique like a fingerprint. This is essential to know. You have a gait. The way you walk is a human gait. There's circuitry embedded in the spine that coordinate all motor strategies based on a learning algorithm that's only yours. If you break your hip or you drag your leg or stroke, the modern computer system still know it's you because you have a signal that's innately you. I've always wanted to know what is innate signal and are we really manifest it. They found that. And around 2011, they said the signal of the network wave is a second known central pattern generator, the central nervous, central pattern generator, like gait. It's a pattern that generates learning behavior consistent with you, like a fingerprint or whatever it is. It's listed in journals, the second known central pattern generator of the spine. It goes to the spine and it regulates learning and reorganization of the central nervous system. Yeah. Then I realized innate intelligence over the years is really different intelligence. This is one that organizes the connection of the tissues, the bones, the ligaments, the connective tissue. And we held a network adjustment. At that point, the body would move like that because connective tissue would be reorganizing. I held it a little differently, and there'll be a tension, there'll be a change in the motor response of emotional. And I met with Ken Wilber, one of the greatest philosophers of our time. We co-evolved our methods. We moved to Boulder, Colorado, was my next door neighbor. We co-evolved our methods. And he said, my system is the first system for the next year of conscious ever developed at actually implementing some of his models. And he said, Donny, I think you are talking about an article I wrote that every spiritual tradition, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hindu, Buddhism, they all speak about an energy that organizes life, a life force, something that moves emotion, something that helps you have a thinking mind that's conditioned to fit in, a higher intellect mind, spiritual aspects. Well, what I was doing is saying, when that's expressed, what is the motor strategy for it? We mapped it out. And we have the motor signature of each level of self-organization of innate intelligence. Our jump now, we called it levels of care and network. And I found that out. And I did that. And we mapped out what people think they see at that area. We're now taking this in research now into another way. And instead of saying these are the levels of care of spinal and neural integrity improvement, these are the levels, embodied levels of consciousness that every spiritual tradition has talked about historically as needed in the world. Yeah. Now, many chiropractors have taken my methods, and most people, as you know, dabble in everything used for their own purposes. Okay, most people don't seek mastery. People are doing programs on personal transformation and stuff with network. I say, you're missing the point. This all developed because giving the freaking best chiropractic care you do, asking new questions, more efficient, produce those changes. You don't need another personal transformational tool in the world. We don't need another spiritual discipline. Trying to elevate consciousness has never freaking worked.
Yeah.
But if you have enough energy that could be organized by the self-organizing intelligence that could be organized at a higher level, we go from a primate neural network that's never been upgraded into an upgraded neural network, which is the answer everyone's looking for in business, in economics. Why business? Because it's you looking at the business. It's you interpreting the business. The magic happens when somehow you are more innately connected. And one other thing, research showed consistent with what Didi said, and I was attacked years ago for saying this a couple of boards. I said that the nervous system functions of vibrational waves, not electrical signals. And they found that a few years ago, that if the synapse was an electrical signal, heat would be given off the synapse. It does not. It's a vibrational acoustic wave. It's a vibrational of a pulse pressure wave. And those pulse pressure waves travel at the speed of the nervous system. Many communications, we think a direct nervous system is a whole system vibrating in resonance with Didi's concept of tone.
It's right there.
And they found this network wave is an acoustic wave also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're really talking about, it seems weird, but what if we actually took the principle of chiropractic, or rather put it on a shelf, philosophically, historically, and made a clinical practice? If the philosophy, science were not separate, what if they were one? What if you had the same thing? And what if we actually grew the chiropractic up to match what the philosophy showed over the years?
Well,
that's the future.
That is, and this, as you were just talking before you mentioned that, it's like what we're doing is we're taking the science, philosophy, and art, and they are one, because the science proves our philosophy, and our philosophy is proving the science, right? And the art is that mixture of taking this and moving it together, right? And we're coming out with this thing called healing, and that's what.
Yes, sir. And I want to expand healing. Ultimately, healing is, and I wrote books on master the aspects. Healing is really a old term that means wholeness and integration. Okay. And healing is never about the condition. It's about the person.
That's right.
And treating the subluxation as another condition, another boogeyman, it'll never make a difference. People really don't care if they have an atlas of C5 subluxation. They don't give a shit. They can say yes, because you're telling them. They care about three things. Who am I? What am I here? What am I made of? And how can I make a freaking difference? And we interface at the identical place, the interface between how you experience the world, how you respond to it, and what life is about. People don't have to be coached into this. They don't have to be told about it. It is naturally evident when you carry more bandwidth because there's more unbound energy available. So oscillation is how cells communicate. It's how we're communicating across space now. My gift to chiropractic was to take the principle and create a physical mechanism demonstrated that links what everyone wants in personal development, spirituality, healing, and consciousness, and say they're not separate. Yeah. It's one. Rather than the definition of subluxation that the Australian Spinal Research Foundation came up with, and I was part of that, and I was really an annoyance for some of the people there pulling this together, that I said, rather than having researchers define subluxation, let's get away from that. What do chiropractors get most excited about when they take care of someone? Why not let people say, this is what happens when we adjust someone. These are the type of changes that light them up and patients up and us up the most. So let's make sure that's part of the definition and let them figure it out. And having a chiropractor do research, let researchers research their research and give them, this is the results that seem to make the big difference. What the hell is going on?
Right.
That's what I did. That's what I did. I personally spent about $2 million in academic education because my highest grade in science was a C. If I went a year later to chiropractic college, I would have been rejected from school because my grades weren't high enough there. Because I was an artist. I looked at life like an artist. So, one other thing. I used to think I was adjusting subluxations. Then I thought I was adjusting spines. Then I thought I was adjusting health. Then I thought I was adjusting lives. Now we're adjusting destinies. But to do that, there has to be a greater respect for the spine as organ of consciousness. That's one of my goals this year, getting academic articles together and interdisciplinary and demonstrating the spine is the #1 modulator or organ of consciousness. And health is the integrated expression of consciousness. It's not about a part of the body, but to do that, we have to go back to the principle. In every case, is the system becoming energy efficient or not? In every way, I look at the spine and teach to look at the spine. And chiropractors looked, whether it be a surface imagery, whether it be a postural analysis, weight scales, every other aspect you do, you're looking at energy efficiency. What about the energy efficiency way the person speaks, what they speak about? Someone says, you know, I've been invest survivor and I've been sober for 13 years. You're still an addict if you're talking about it. That's telling me if your conversation is about that, you're still in a defense strategy there. And you know what? You got to take a look at something different. I also came to a belief in spine, when you do a structural force application, like clunk to move a bone supposedly, letting me do it, I believe you're locking in the reality a person has at that point. And I would never go to move a bone because it's fixated or locked. I'll never put a force on the side that's locked. I'll never try to, because innate has locked it for a reason to protect it. I'll put the force in where innate accepts the force most, where there's a higher threshold of excitability. Just generally get into it. This thing goes, oh my God. So is it a subluxation? Is it a misalignment? When you're in school, when I was in school around the same time, we learned that traversified technique was perversified.
Yeah.
Because once you did your full system assessment of the spine, even if you only adjust the pelvis or cervical spine, you looked at the relationship with the upper slide to sacrum, you looked at the whole cyst, you did instrumentation palpation, and you decide which is the major subluxation which would affect everything else, expecting and looking at the system. And if you did your upper cervical analysis or your Gonstead analysis or your SOT or whatever analysis you were doing, or your terminal point or your whatever technique you used, if the force application generally just used with that technique was not effective, diversified would be another means of applying a force once you assess the system. And you would never put a force on the spine hoping and praying what's going to happen. You had an outcome, and what that outcome of that spine meant for the person's health and well-being. I just wish the students understood the depth of what chiropractic has. Chiropractic was not developed to be socially, politically correct. Cancel political correctness. Cancel that. It was meant to be an outrageous claim for the innate potential for humanity. I have and I always will serve my sacred trust and faith in the principles which chiropractic has had. And whatever form it has to take, I will be there helping it take that form. And it's my hope that the chiropractors start studying the volumes the chiropractors have written in the past. We didn't have a culture for it, and everyone is looking for what we have.
Yeah. But you know, there's an old saying, it's looking back to see the future, right? Dr. Williams wrote a book called Looking Back to See the Future. And it's something that we need to do as a profession because, like you said, you know, it's that integration. right? And bringing that integration there. Donny, listen, you've given so much information and so much. You just gave us a dish. I mean, you gave us like a platter, it's beautiful. And I want to thank you.
And I want to thank you, everyone listening to this. You're listening to this because you're called for more. I call that a seeker. A seeker is someone who knows there's more than the physical material universe. They know there's more. They know what to be more. They know to be more, they have to serve more. To serve more, then they'll be more. And it's a cycle there. And it's not about you or me, it's all of us. It's a seeker. We're seeking more because we know there's a better world. And technique has to fit into the integration of life.
Yeah.
And people, it's a celebration of the sacred every single moment. And not just because I say it, but what better gift could you have than to liberate the organizing force of life and to then to question, am I really doing that?
Yeah.
That's the time for us to grow up. Are we really doing it?
Yeah.
Because the principle is bigger and we don't have time in human history now for us to mess around. If it doesn't look weird in business, in economy and everything, it's not going to be around in 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm. So
be okay. BJ said the inhibited starve history, the uninhibited make history. So be it.
So be it. So be it. I love it. I love it. And thank you, Donny. I appreciate you. To all of our viewers, man, listen, just rewatch this because there's so much that was just given to us. And you could take it, one adjustment isn't enough, right? We're under care, to make sure that our nervous systems are functioning to the best of its ability for the rest of our lives. So keep listening to this and you'll pull out different things and just know that whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing it from a place of evolvement, and also with intention, right? From the purest place. And Donny, that's what I got from you, man. That purity that just came out of you, that oozed out of you during this leadership line was just incredible. So to our viewers, thank you. I'll come back at you at our next episode with our next guest. But for right now, digest this, take it in. Donny, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yep. And for all of everyone else, just know this, know that as you move forward, you are progressing our profession and you are taking our profession to the people that need it the most. And that's everybody, right? Every woman, child, and man on this planet should have the opportunity to make sure that their nervous systems are oscillating and functioning at the highest level possible for them. And I love and appreciate you, and come back at us with your, for our next leadership line. Until then, stay safe, keep hugging people around you, and deliver chiropractic the best, most efficient way that you know how. So thanks, and we'll see you again next time.